Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Shafiur Suleiman. Thank you very much for staying with us. And today, we're looking at AKK, of course, revisiting Africa's largest trans-Saharan gas pipeline project. And just like I said earlier on, we have in the studio experts in this sector who together will be dissecting the issues around the challenges of delivering this very important project. Let me start with Engineer Abagi. There has been so much, hype, around the commencement of this project, the AKK, especially looking at what it has in terms of changing, or adding value to the economy. Sometimes it's a legacy project of this administration, looking at, the quantum and the investment, 2.8 billion US dollars. It's not a small amount of money. But with the recent, what is gradually coming to the public domain, is that the withdrawal of Chinese who initially were to provide this funding has significant impact in the stalemate, if you like. But there are other factors. How are you looking at this project and now that it is told along the line?
Well, Shafiu, it's sad that the project is going this way. And the reasons are that if you look at it from the global perspective, one, Nigeria is actually a gas country in the sense that we are ranked as number 4 amongst the gas producing countries in the world after Russia, Kuwait, and I think Qatar or something like that. So you will now find that given the world economic, agenda of how to articulate the issue of energy transition, meaning that going from fossil fuels to more friendly, energy, like the renewable energies and things like that. When you look at also the issue of climate change, the degradation of these emission of the gas, to the atmosphere, and also the economic advantages that will come. What am I trying to say? All along we've just been flaring, this gas, and of course it has its own ecological, problems.
Wasting energy, resources that is badly needed by other continents.
Yes. So what I'm trying to say is that you would have killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Here you would have reduced to a very minimal level the degradation of the environment, meaning the warming of the environment, the global warming I'm talking about. As far as we are concerned, that would have some impact, and we may even earn some advantages, some even in terms of material gain from the global community. Number 2, we would have also been able to use this to now transform agriculture sector, industrial, sector, because instead of you battling with this power generation issue, if you have this gas, that you are able to now tap from the various points where we are flaring them, and then transmit them through this AKK, to not only the northern part, but also up to the Sahara, because it's going to go into the Trans-Sahara gas pipeline, Morocco and to Europe. And given the scenario we have today of Ukraine, Russia, and the fact that EU, they are now at sea as to how they are going to solve these economic problems. Yes, exactly. So it would have been a very, very good opportunity for Nigeria to now make the best of what God has given to us. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's a tragedy that this project, which would have been the signature project, which would have been the legacy that Buhari administration can say they have left for generations yet unborn in terms of, revitalizing the economy, and then, if you like, a kind of great leap forward for economic transformation, because gas, we know everywhere, like I've said, both agriculture sector, industrial sector, and these are the main sectors. When you're talking about boost your GDP, that's gross domestic product, these are the areas
Critical
that feed
sectors.
exactly, into GDP. So which means even your naira will become stronger because your product, your GDP, that means your productivity has improved, and then talk about North in particular, you see, where there's abject poverty. And this abject poverty, of course, is also powered by the fact that we don't have steady supply of power, because these small scale industries rely on steady supply, and even the big industries for that matter, would have been benefited, largely from this project that today is being handled with the kind of levity that you would expect not to come.
Oh, okay.
So
yes, Mr. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think you should lay sufficient background.
Okay.
Looking at the current situation, funding is said to be the bane of this project. The Chinese are pulling out, and then government is looking at alternative funding avenues and what have you. But then some would say if there is perhaps enough will, if you like, or there's a lot more commitment, there could be other areas that can be blocked, wastages, for instance, that could perhaps be channeled towards, realizing this project, instead of just waiting to, endlessly waiting for alternative financiers or people who will fund the project. Take, for instance, earlier on we were having a conversation, and engineer was talking about even the huge amount of money that is being wasted, or the stalling that is being stolen, in our crude oil sector, gas and crude oil sector and what have you. Is enough, within a year, if you look at the amount that is being lost by Nigeria, is enough to finance this project. But yet, here we are, cup in hand.
I think what we have to understand critically is that gas projects in this country have, with the exception of the Nigeria liquefied natural gas, have always been jinxed. It's not that we don't have the gas. We have it, as the engineer has said, quite right.
We're talking about 208.62 trillion cubic feet.
In fact, it is often said that the oil that we have exists in a sea of gas. That's to tell you the quantum of gas we have, and it's correct. But you see, the issue of gas is the mix. It's a complex thing, and I want to tell you, even the NLNG was in gestation period for about 30 years before it came into fruition. And that's not because we don't have the gas. That's not because the gas is not available, but it's because of the mix. The gas issue is not like the crude oil, for instance, where you can gas off and do things. In the gas, you need to have financing taken care of. You need to have the markets taken care of. You need to have all of these front end activities taking place before you.
Are we lacking the market? For instance, I understand that EU alone, rely on Nigeria's gas. 18% of what the EU requirement is. It is made by Nigeria.
No, but let me make the point.
Is it that we don't have the market?
We have the capacity to produce. As I said, we have very huge reserves of gas, but there are issues regarding that. The technical issues, the commercial issues, the security issues. Now, as I'm talking to you now, one of the problems that NLNG is having is ability to get the feed gas from the field. The plants are there, but the feed gas is there, and of course, you have to have the technical aspects taken care of, because if you don't have them, all of this in the mix together, you can never have the gas. For instance, we conceived in independent power in NIPP. It never took off the ground. There are several LPG initiatives, never took off the ground. We wanted to do additional LNG, OK LNG and brass LNG. It never took off the ground. But the one that has taken off the ground, which is NLNG itself, is struggling to even have feedstock. Now, if you put a project like AKK, where of course you still have not been able to get together, where the feedstock is going to come from, because the feedstock is going to come from gas gathering plants that would now feed Ajaokuta and then into the pipelines right through the Trans-Sahara.
But why is it difficult to get that?
Yeah, because first of all, there are security issues, because there's a lot of pipeline vandalization, and then around that area there's a lot of interference in the system. There's a lot of technical issues, a lot of commercial issues, a lot of security issues. Now, I understand the AKK is supposed to be part of the Trans-Saharan gas. Nigeria has actually 3 options supplying gas to Western markets. It has the Trans-Saharan gas, it has the West African gas that will, through Morocco. This one goes through Algeria, and then it has gas through tankers. That's through an LNG plant, for instance, whether in Brass or somewhere in OK or somewhere in OK LNG. But the issue now is having to be able to put together the feedstock and also the financing. Now, financing is very critical now, because at the moment, finance is pretty much a challenge in the international system, and also getting the partners to come in here. It was by stroke of luck, if I would say, that we were able to get the partners, Shell, Shell Gas, Ajib, and Total, to come into partnership with NNPC to develop the NLNG. Now, the other LNG plants that were planned didn't get off because these issues were not taken care of. And I'm afraid the same thing is happening with the AKK. And it's a tragedy, because it is actually one of the things that would have helped to, develop the economies, the economy, revive the economy, the comatose economy of northern Nigeria. Because if you notice, Kano used to be an industrial town. Kaduna, most of the industries now have gone off because of lack of power supply, and the AKK was supposed to help it, because as the main trunk line goes off to the transport, there will be spurs into certain areas that will supply gas, LPG, LNG, into that, rejuvenating the power sector there and helping small-scale industries, revive them and all that. But all that now has gone into a question mark.
Right, the projection, just like he said, was actually to revive this moribund, industries, and the hubs, talking about the Kaduna, Kakuri, Sharaɗa, Funtua, and all of that. But with this, where we find ourselves today, all of this hope, is about to be dashed by inability to secure these funds. But funding, as critical as it is, also there are avenues where some will say, where government can source these funds. If we can be able to source funds, perhaps to pay for subsidy, which is some shadowy kind of subsidy, to the tune of 6 trillion naira there are the projection, looking at next year. What stops us from whatever it takes for us to borrow, if it means borrowing, to finance this project because of this, the importance?
Yeah, you see, it's all about leadership incompetence. That's what has led us to where we are today, as far as this project is concerned. Because I remember when Obasanjo came to power, well, one of the first things he did was to ensure that the Southwest was, piped. Gas was piped to most of all the industries in the Southwest. And that's why the kind of problems we are having here, the Southwest, does not suffer from such problems.
Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. And today our talking point is impeachment threats and issues in the polity. And we are joined by Comrade Shehu Sani, former senator representing Kaduna Central at the Red Chamber, talking about the Senate of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me.
Right, okay, let's go straight into the discussion. Let's start with this one that borders, if you like, your former constituency, talking about the National Assembly. There has been this concern, by the opposition lawmakers, which generated some heated, debate, culminating into a motion, wanting to commence impeachment process against the president. But then it was somewhat shut down, by the Senate President Ahmed Lawan. But then the opposition lawmakers still went ahead after staging a walkout, to issue a 6-week ultimatum. First, let me get your perspective. There has been a lot of a reaction to that development. Some see it as just a mere, showmanship, if you like. It is not for real, some will say. You've been in the Senate, and you also gauge the mood of this current Senate. Did it come to you as a surprise?
Well, first of all, I think it's important that we make this very clear, that it is within the constitutional duties and responsibility of the National Assembly to impeach the president. The National Assembly has the constitutional powers to impeach the president. That should settle in our mind. Now, impeachment comes with process and procedure. And if you go through the rules of the House, the question you need to ask yourself is, those who are proposing the impeachment, do they actually have the numbers? Because if you go back into history, though you cannot compare what has been happening in State Assembly with the National Assembly.
That's right.
Where in the State Assembly, all you need to do is to collect signatures, and you may not even have the numbers, and with the backing of the police, you can impeach a sitting governor. Now, the National Assembly and the presidency impeachment is a serious matter, because it is as important as the unity, the stability, and the peace of the country. So there has not been any successful attempt to impeach the president since president of Nigeria, since Nigeria's independence 62 years ago. Because if you look at how the procedure comes, you will come to the conclusion that it is not impossible, but it's difficult.
Almost impossible.
Yeah, it is difficult to achieve. The opposition in the National Assembly, specifically those within the Senate, proposed the idea of impeaching the president after exhausting all the channels that could have brought the attention and action of Mr. President to end the lawlessness, the bloodletting, the kidnapping, the violence, the banditry and terrorism in Nigeria. And before we land on that, it's important we go backwards to the 8th Senate. During the 8th Senate, our period at that time was considered as being belligerent and combative to the president. We have been seen to be a stumbling block, and we have also been seen to be the enemies of what they call progress. People who have been labeled or branded as enemies of Mr. President. And as such, we have made it impossible for him to work. Now, after our Senate, then you have the 9th Senate that came with a new image of being subservient and compliant to everything.
His
about
collaboration considered subservient.
Hold on. Well, they pride themselves as, and the president has never failed in each occasion to praise them for cooperating with him, for being very loyal to him. Now, that aside, but on this issue of impeachment, the opposition lawmakers knew within their conscience that it is impossible to impeach this president by virtue of the fact that as an opposition, they don't have the numbers. For them to be able to impeach President Muhammadu Buhari, they need a large number of people from the ruling All Progressive Congress. And how can that work? So if you
So are they seeking attention now?
What they did was more of a message being sent to the president that even for the fact that impeachment has been mentioned on the floor of the Senate is an informal declaration of loss of confidence on the president and a message for him
By a section
to
of the
act
Senate?
fast. Yes.
The opposition
Yes,
lawmakers.
and for him to act. And also, they try to also send message to Nigerians that we are not all rubber stamps and that there are people among us who are standing up to something.
Okay, let's look at the fallout. Let's look at the fallout. You know, the fact that it's a message and it somewhat syncs, you know, with the presidency, some would say. We begin to see some sort of reaction, you know, from the executive arm when the president, you know, did mention that the security forces now have his backing to go all out against these terrorist groups and what have you, and show no mercy. Since then, we're beginning to see some level of intensified campaigns against the non-state actors. For instance, there were 3 key successes, some will say. The recent has to do with the attack on you know, an enclave of this terrorists in Rugu Forest in Katsina, where 28 elements of you know, ISWAP and the leader were said to have been neutralized. Just today or yesterday, again, there was also another attack, another raid on a camp around some 30 kilometers away from Kaduna, along what they call, Mangoro area in you know, parts of Niger State or so. Another 18, including the leader, were said to have been neutralized. In Borno, there was also another attack, you know, on terrorist elements, you know, having disagreement among themselves, and then there was an interdiction, which also led to neutralization of a number of elements. Looking at the, you know, the message and how the government is responding, is it to say that we're getting the result of that threat? Is actually, if it is a threat?
Well, a responsible government and a responsible leader should not wait for him to be threatened when the people he leads are being slaughtered, are being kidnapped, and are being crushed, are being displaced on a daily basis. The northwestern part of Nigeria has become a theater of war. And for states like Kaduna, Niger, and Katsina State, parts of Kebbi and Zamfara State are currently the hub of terrorist groups, from ISWAP to Boko Haram to Ansaru to Darul Islam and to bandits. Now, after every attack, there will always be meetings, urgent meetings, emergency meetings, crucial meetings, closed-door meetings, and all these kind of meetings. And then the next thing you hear is the president has given directive, an immediate directive that the bandits should be crushed. Now, we have security agencies in all parts of Nigeria. We have the military, the Navy, the police, the civil defense, and the DSS. A country like ours should not be held hostage by bands of terrorists. And people should ask questions. Why is Benin Republic not infested with banditry and terrorism? Why is Niger Republic? Why is Chad? Why is Cameroon? I know they have their own security challenges. There are attacks in Niger, especially within the border of Cameroon, Niger and Burkina Faso, soldiers were killed. There are also attacks in Chad and Cameroon. But why is it so prevalent here, so deadly and bloody in this part? The simple thing is that the government and security agencies have failed to take proactive measures to protect Nigerians. Now, these successes that are recorded are commendable. And it is wrong for anybody to say Nigerian army are not doing it. It is a disservice and demeaning to gallant and heroic men and women who have sacrificed their lives in the army and the police to protect us. We must appreciate them. But you don't have to wait until you are being threatened, until your seat is being threatened. It means that what is most important to you is the seat, and that you take action only when you're threatened. Now, what I want to tell you this. A nation of 211 million people.
Okay, I was actually coming to that because you talked about the other states that are on the fringes of Nigeria who are lesser in terms of number. We're talking about a country with a huge expanse of land, porous borders. We're talking about more than 1,000 or thereabout borders that are unmanned. We're also dealing with a country that is complex, in terms of its society, in terms of interest, and in terms of actors, also operating within the state. And some would say the combination of all of this would certainly make it, difficult, if you like, or complex for any government to operate. But you talked about, the fact that there are missing links. I would want to know, Nigerians would also want to know, what are those missing links? You talk about the strength of the army. You talk about, the capacity of Nigeria to deal with issues like this. Where are the missing links?
Well, there are a lot of things to say about why we have found ourselves here.
Okay.
But terrorism and banditry doesn't happen in a day. It evolves where you have failure of responsibility, failure of duty to act, failure of governance at all levels. Then you will see a seed has been planted to which it has grown today, threatening the unity and peace of the country. Now, let me tell you this.
The seed, okay.
Let me tell you this.
Yes.
Go to our divisional police offices. That is the agency, the unit of security that is closer to the people
The civil
and that
authorities,
has a national network in all the nook and crannies of Nigeria. Divisional offices of the police, they don't have operational vehicles. They don't have communication gadgets. Even if they detain people, there is not enough money to feed them. Many of these stations here don't even have electricity. If anybody is arrested, they have to struggle to get paper and pen for him to write statements. Now, we have lost it right from that level. And we are still losing it now. We have spent over 4.2 trillion naira in the last 7 years in the name of defense and security. But go to our divisional police offices and ask what has changed there. Nothing has changed.
Yeah. Some will say the attention
we have spent over $1 billion to buy Tucano aircraft and 900 and something million for attack helicopters. But if we arm the military and refuse to upgrade and modernize our police forces, our civil defense, our immigration, our custom, then where are we?
Governor Ahmadu Fintiri of Adamawa State made headlines last week following the declaration of Vice Chancellor of Adamawa State University, Professor Kwale Tafwa Barauta, as running mate in the forthcoming 2023 governorship election. Fintiri, who explained that the decision was made with the consent of the current Deputy Governor, Crowther Seth, added that the University Don was selected based on her track record as a trusted and dependable person. However, observers have linked the nomination of the University Don as a last-minute political move to secure the support of Adamawa women following the emergence of Senator Aisha Ahmed Binani as the governorship candidate of the opposition All Progressives Congress in the state. On the program today, we're joined by Ahmed Sajo, a public commentator and communication expert, to give us his perspective on the issue. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Right.
It's a pleasure.
Right. We are also joined by, that is all the way from Yola, Chief Fenifwa. He is a stakeholder in the politics of Adamawa State. He is also said to be close to the camp of a deputy governor who, a retired permanent secretary, who joins us now virtually. Let's have, okay, I understand we'll get him soon, to join us properly for the conversation. Now, let's take a quick break, and after which this conversation will now commence. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics, and today we're focusing our searchlight on Adamawa politics. And just like I said, we have Ahmed Sajo right here in the studio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Right. For observers, who have been watching and following the politics of Adamawa State, the emergence of Aisha Binani, that is the governorship candidate of the APC, appeared to have changed the current dynamics in the state. First of all, her emergence is quite unprecedented, some would say, in the politics of especially a state in northern Nigeria. For the first time, having a female on the ballot as governorship candidate. I think she is the first in the history of the North generally.
No. Maman Taraba of Taraba State of Blessed
right,
Memory, Aisha,
yes,
Al-Hassan was the first.
Was on the ballot. That's right. Okay, it is still something to cheer up. Some would say, looking at the conservative nature of Adamawa State.
I don't know on what basis you're saying that. I think if there's any state in Nigeria that is set to produce a female governor, it should be Adamawa State.
Yeah, but the current statistics doesn't indicate that. I think you have only 5 female participating in governance.
I'm coming. Let's understand one thing. We have 3 senatorial districts in Adamawa State. The Northern Senatorial District, the Central Senatorial District, and the Southern Senatorial District. The Southern Senatorial District was the first to produce a female senator in the person of Grace Folashade Jackson Bent. After that, the Northern Senatorial District followed up by producing Binta Masi Garba as a senator. And then the Central now produced Aisha Tutairu Ahmed Binani. So all the 3 senatorial zones, you cannot get any other state in Nigeria that has
so
had
it is not by coincidence.
It's not by coincidence.
It has been. It's part of the.
Then Adamawa State is the first state to produce the chairman of a major political party, a female, when Binta Garba became the first elected female chairman of APC at its inception. Right. So we have had this. Now, don't forget, Wale Fua, the wife to Femi Fua, was once the deputy speaker of the Adamawa State House of Assembly, and she even acted as speaker for some time. So we have had a history of Adamawa women. And don't forget, also, I'm still coming, that it's only from Adamawa you will have 2 sisters, Zainab Maina and Hajo Sani, become ministers of women affairs at different times in Nigeria here. So Adamawa women have always raised their head in trying to break the glass ceiling for quite some time. So it's not a strange phenomenon if Adamawa produces a governor. And head or tails, Adamawa State is set to again, put the women on a very high pedestal in the next election.
Okay, so let's get to the fact that you set the stage. How are they able to do this? Because the recent, governorship primaries that produced Aisha Binani, for instance, what was quite interesting, looking at how she was able to beat at least 4 or 5 male contenders, including a former governor, including a former EFCC boss.
Yes.
And so it was quite surprising how she was.
No, it's not surprising. She has a trajectory. If it's not a happenstance. It did not happen just out of the blues. When she made her first attempt to go into politics, she went for the House of Representatives. Yola North, Yola South, Gire, the most cosmopolitan of all the local governments in Adamawa State. You know, Yola North and Yola South are the seat of the state capital and the Lamid of Adamawa, the premier traditional ruler, while Gire is where the university is situated. So these are highly cosmopolitan areas and things, and we have had, at that time, some hired Islamic clerics did all they could do to say a woman cannot lead. But she won. When she contested for the Senate last election, there was nothing again that was not done to stop her. But I tell you that as popular as President Muhammadu Buhari is in the politics of this country, Binani's votes were higher than Buhari in all the polling units. So she won the Senate convincingly.
Landslide, yes.
You understand? So she has had this history. But what gives her an advantage over every other person is that she has come out, you know, as one of the most generous and compassionate politicians Adama has ever produced. That you cannot take away from her. In 2014, Boko Haram overran 7 local governments in Adamawa State. And then we had a deluge of internally displaced persons
IDPs,
in Yola. She and her husband took care of so many of those IDPs. And when the military recovered some of the areas, particularly Mubi, which was the next biggest city and the commercial capital of Adamawa State, she stationed 2 buses in the motor park. Anybody going back to Yola will enter the buses for free. Then there will be a 10 kg bag of rice and 1,000 naira for you to return with. She did this in 2014. Little did people know this. So this is not something she has done. When she wants to do empowerment as a legislature, she doesn't do it to 1,000 people, 2,000 people. The minimum is like 10,000 people. And she has made it a point that this what Hausa people say, Rijaya Bayer Gugaya Hana. It doesn't happen.
She makes sure that it gets to the people.
She sits down there and hands over the things to you herself. Right. Sometimes she stays till late at night, handing over these things to people to make sure that intermediaries do not. So people connected with her.
But there are also concerns around that, the generosity you're talking about, because some say, you know, because of her position, I understand she's the chairman, you know, Millennium Development Goals, a committee on Millennium Development Goals in the Senate, for instance, and then again, some of the things, you know, some of those things she shared to the people are also there are allegations along that line. That,
was she chairman Millennium Development Goals in 20? I mean, when she was House of Reps, was she chairman Millennium Goals when she had no position? She had done this before.
But some say some of these things are federal government proper. I mean,
there are people who have collected these federal government things, locked them up, and deny people until people broke warehouses and took them forcefully.
So she was able to share.
So whatever you say, you know, you cannot take away the fact that she was able to, at least, even if it is from federal government, but she distributed it. What of the people that hoarded it? So and not only in Adama, all over Nigeria, you saw it when young people were breaking into warehouses and picking things that were meant to be shared.
So she understands very well, you know, perhaps this politics of stomach infrastructure, if I understand. And perhaps those she defeated were also not, in good books of the people of Adamawa State in terms of their ability to reach out. Is that?
No. I think what I want you to look at is that during times of hardship, any little display of compassion is amplified. We are in period of hardship. We can't deny that. No matter how we want to defend where we are today, there is a lot of hardship, occasioned mostly by factors that are even beyond the shores of Nigeria. You cannot deny those things have happened. You cannot deny, for example, that there was a COVID-19. And in 2020, Binani distributed more palliative than the government.
Okay.
And some from personal resources. You know, you cannot deny that these things happen. So people look forward to compassion. And then her empowerment programs were sometimes targeted at, no, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but the question, remember, I'm talking about, you know, how was she able to, is it to say that those who have contested along with her, the likes of former Governor Bindo, Zubila Bindo, and of course, Nuri Badu and others are not, you know, close, I mean, are not in tune with the realities facing the people, or they're not that, I mean, generous to support the people at that, you know, in this trying time.
To be very honest with you, each one of them has done the best they could do. But on a scale of generosity, you know, there are many scales when you're analyzing a politician. On a scale of name recognition, you give it to Bindo, because as a former governor, there's no community in the state that he cannot relate with. So he had the highest point in terms of name recognition. In terms of media exposure, especially nationally, you cannot compete with Nuhuri Badu. You understand?
That's the office,
exactly. In terms of even, you know, having an experience of contesting for a position previously, you cannot compare with Namdas, who was a deputy governorship candidate, who was press secretary to a governor and deputy governorship candidate and the House of Reps. They all had their advantages. But I tell you what made the difference.
Okay.
Two things made the difference. One, her apparent generosity. But secondly, for the first time in the history of the politics of any state, you know, women rallied round.
September 28 is the scheduled date for the commencement of presidential and National Assembly campaigns, as published by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Ahead of the campaigns, political parties who are fielding candidates in the forthcoming 2023 presidential election are warming up to use any available platform to market their respective candidates. Today on the program, we will be discussing issues that will form the basis of the anticipated campaigns. And we are joined by Barrister Hannatu Musawa, a columnist, a Deputy Director, Communication, Media and Publicity, and also a Deputy Spokesperson, Tinubu Campaign Council. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hi. Okay, before we commence the discussions, let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. And now the conversation begins. We have in the studio Hannatu Musawa, who is the Deputy Spokesperson of the Tinubu Campaign Council. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me start by congratulating you,
Thank you.
on your
Thank
appointment.
You. Thank you.
It's quite apt, some would say, looking at the fact that there has been this yearning for women inclusion in active politicking, if you like, now being a spokesperson.
Exactly.
Let me start from that point of view. You know, how tasking is it going to be looking at the fact that, you know, you have to square up with men, if you like, in terms of marketing and also defending some of the policies that will be churned out?
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. It's going to be, I think tasking probably is not the right adjective. I think for me, it's going to be extremely exciting. I think, yes, I'm squaring up with men, but as they say, what a man can do, a woman can do a lot better. Yes. And possibly, you know, the fact that there's a woman representation is key as the national discourse we've been having all over the country. And I think it's very important for women out there all over Nigeria to see that they have representation in this on this platform. So it's a very exciting time for me, and it is a time that I want to apply myself in the appropriate manner in order to ensure that my principles are elected come 2023.
Yeah, let's start with the constituency, talking about the women, for instance, and of course what will form the basis of the engagement, Women in Nigeria, and in northern Nigeria in particular, the receiving end, if you like, of virtually all that is happening in the country in terms of what we're getting out of governance, either if you're talking about insecurity or you're talking about economic decline and what have you. Now, it would be appropriate perhaps to ask you how, if you actually have an idea of what would be, you'll be confronted with, engaging women going forward.
I think it's actually very easy when it comes to politics, especially I speak from my position as a northern woman. Most of the electorate actually resides in rural areas. And in rural areas, as you would know, because of a tradition, men can't traditionally enter into the houses where the women and the children reside. So it is a plus, is a positive, that as a woman, if you engage yourself on that level, you have the opportunity to interact with the women especially in the rural areas, one-on-one, and you have an ability to be able to reach out to them and to change their thought process, because you would have direct interaction with them, as opposed to men in those sort of areas that don't have the privilege or access, ability to be able to interact with people on that level. And as you would know, I think women constitute the majority of the voting public. So, women are key in the electoral process, and I think if politicians realize that, they would put more emphasis on having more women representation.
Do you think women, have gotten, if you like, what they have bargained for in the last 4 years, for instance, looking at the fact that, yes, they consider, the bulk of the voting population, and, they brought in this administration, which happens to be an administration that is being run by your political party, the APC. Would you say that women perhaps had a better bargain?
Yes, in some ways they have, in some ways they haven't. I will start with the vote against the 35% affirmative action, which was a total disaster for women of us who wanted to see progress as far as gender issues are concerned. So I think we could have done a lot better in terms of representation as well. We could have done a lot better in governance. In another respect, you look at the appointment of the likes of Hajia Saidia Umar Farouk in the Humanitarian Ministry, Disaster Management and Social Investment. And you can see a woman from a traditional part of Zamfara state elected on such a huge platform where she had the ability to affect people's lives. And so that has certainly been a plus for the administration and a plus for women. But I really do think women will be able to do a lot better. And I hope in the coming administration we'll be able to affect the change from the legislature that women deserve to see. For me, hopefully 50% affirmation.
Okay, 50% affirmation, You talked about Saidia Omar, who happens to be at the helm of affairs at the Ministry of Humanitarian, affairs and what have you. Again, one of the sectors, that came under public scrutiny is the economic sector. And fortunately, again, we had a woman, spearheading the Ministry of Finance. Today, looking at indices of economic indices, some would say, that we are having a downward slide, if you like, or decline. And this is a ministry that is being headed by a woman, and perhaps Nigerians will be looking at the performance of women also in governance. How would you rate perhaps her performance in that respect, and what the government is doing, whether it is actually getting the results, and how would you feel if someone said, for instance, that the issue of cost of living in Nigeria is dramatically high, and these are some of the issues we have to face, going forward.
As a campaign, the Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaign, together with Alhaji Kashim Shettima, we have committed ourselves to being very honest with Nigerians, to align ourselves with the plights of Nigerians. There is no doubt that things are biting for the nation. Economically, things have not probably gone as well as we had expected. But in that regard, what I want to point out is, the government did come in. There was a recession, and not long after that, we had a pandemic. And as the global pandemic, and as the world was trying to recover from that, you had the Ukraine war. So the global economy is just not, Nigeria is not in isolation, has suffered as a result of those. So Nigeria is not isolated in the fact that maybe economically things have not been in the position that we had wanted them to be. But when you look at from a global perspective, and you take the Nigerian economy and you put it pari passu with macroeconomic realities in other nations, you will find that Nigeria did not really fare as badly as maybe as what we feel, as maybe what people are saying, more exacting critics are saying, assessing, and the way that we feel. Things are very difficult for Nigerians, there's no doubt about that. And Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is hoping to come up with economic plan that will give Nigeria the kind of economic recovery that is it requires. So I think the Honourable Minister of Finance has done a very decent, stellar job under very, very difficult circumstances.
Talking about addressing the problems, and you are also talking about consolidation. I understand, because it's the same political party, the APC, for instance. And some would say, your principal, if he happens to emerge, winner of the election, come May 29th, would face a very Herculean task of reversing the trend, looking at the nosediving indices, just like I was saying. Agreed, Nigeria cannot be isolated from, the workings of the dynamics of the international economy, but some would say, have to do with our policies. Our macroeconomic policies are not giving us the result. We keep having depreciation of the value of the naira. The rising inflation. We're talking about double-digit inflation. The rising number of unemployed Nigerians, it is also hitting the roof. And then we're talking about our piling debt profile and what have you. So there are, multiplicity of issues that need to be confronted. How do you think your principal can change this or reverse the trend, if it happens to come on board?
Oh, I have every single confidence that my principal, together with his running mate, Alhaji Kashim Shettima, will reverse that trend. If you focus on the indisputable achievements of these two great achievers when they were piloting their states, Borno State and Lagos State, you will know and find and understand that they have the innovation to be able specifically not only to come up with the right policies, but to identify individuals, brilliant cerebral individuals that will be able to prefer best solutions for some of these challenges that we have. At the moment, they are working on tweaking or updating the manifesto that Bola Ahmed Tinubu already had. I mean, this is a man that was ready from the get-go. And together with the support of Alhaji Kashim Shettima, who is an incredibly innovative, forward-thinking, cerebral minded person, they will be able, I feel, to come up with the policies that will be able to address all these issues. These are some of the areas maybe that the government has been found wanting. And this is of great concern for this duo to be able to sort of address all those areas and pay more attention to those areas so that Nigerians can, a resurgence from the very difficult times that all of us are experiencing at the moment.
When are Nigerians going to get this blueprint? Some say your principal by now ought to have, a working blueprint. The fact that he has been eyeing this position, the number one seat, even though he didn't contest, but he said it is his lifetime ambition. So Nigerians expected that he by now should have, a blueprint with regards to how to address the problems of Nigeria. You talk about rejigging it. Is there one in the first place?
Oh yes, there's one. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has had a blueprint. There is a blueprint in place. But of course, there's dynamic situations, changing situations in Nigeria, and it has to be applied in that regard. So very, very soon you will get a manifesto, and I hope I'll be back on this show to
talk about that.
dissect it
Okay.
with you.
Okay. Well, while we progress, talk about the issues, again, there are also existential baggages, some would say, around the candidates. Your principal, not an exception. Right from the emergence up to now, there had been a number of issues. Some say even the APC camp is just witnessing what some would call peace of the graveyard. The aspirants who have contested the primaries are not being seen actively engaged or involved in this movement, if you like. Well, no, there haven't been, discordant tones, but then there hasn't been also active participation of this key party man. What is happening? Are we likely going to see an APC going into the race with a united front?
In the aftermath of the primary election, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu made it a point to reach out to all the aspirants who were not successful during that exercise, and he opened his arms to invite them to come on board his campaign. And I think for the most part, we've been able to accommodate most of the aspirants. I mean, there are some who have been very vocal in the fact that they had wanted aspirants from certain regions, and they have declared for other aspirants, and it's their right to do so. But and even the party itself, in the aftermath of that election, there was mechanisms put in place by the party to ensure that anyone that felt disenfranchised was sort of reached out to and carried along. And as far as I know, there is unity in the party. As far as I know, maybe now people are not coming out to campaign, the campaigns have not started, but by the time the campaigns have started, I'm sure that you'll see a barrage of all the aspirants that vied for that seat will be coming to campaign for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashmir Shettima in their respective communities.